Hi there, everybody. Welcome to Living the Line. I'm Carson Grubaugh, and today I'm welcoming my lovely partner Tori back to the show. Sean's dealing with some family business, so we're going to do family business here and do some recordings together.
Yeah, man.
Tell us about the book that we're reading today.
Uh, no, it was really good. It's called I'm a Terminal Cancer Patient, but I'm Fine. The author's name's Hilnama.
Yeah, that's how I pronounce it. And this is the 38-year-old author of erotic manga who now has colon cancer and is doing an autobio book, which I thought would be interesting read for both of us, given the fact that we've been dealing with a lot of medical stuff, and you want to be a nurse and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it was just really interesting. And it's like strangely cute, even though it's dealing with terrible subject matter. Like the art style is super cute, and even though it's talking about terminal cancer, the thing I like about it is that it's such a light-hearted book through all of that.
Which, yeah, starts. By the way, we should say that you've not got cancer. This is purely your own choice to shave your head.
I just look cute.
Yeah.
No, I've been losing my hair for many years, and so I just took it off. So, yeah, this is not about I'm not bald because I have cancer.
Yeah, just so people don't get worried, we have been dealing with Tori has had long COVID, which has been pretty debilitating since September of 2022. So I think that conversation that we're gonna have is probably like how we related to everything that we've dealt with in relationship to what she dealt with. I'm assuming. So hopefully this will be an interesting and probably overly intimate conversation.
Yeah, we'll try not to make it like too awkward.
Oh, probably get awkward. It would be good.
I mean, there's a lot of butt conversations, so I mean, it's just awkward. But
oh, okay, yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of butt conversations because, as she says, normally I create naked manga that I can't quite show you here. By which she means boys' life manga.
Yeah, she does like erotic.
Yeah, yaoi.
Boys' life stuff. Oh, and here she's talking about how she thinks before she got cancer, she thought that getting a diagnosis for like an illness was this really dramatic thing where you're like sitting in an office and the doctor's like, the test came back and it's this, and it's not really. She said it's not like that at all. There's a lot of waiting, and I like put a note. There's lots of people not listening to you initially. Like you're having to even just get people to like listen to the symptoms you're having, and then waiting on tests and waiting on a procedure and waiting on the results, and like it's not like
there's no CSI.
Yeah, it's not like that dramatic like flurry of stuff that like you see on TV. So it was interesting that she made that statement because it's like, yeah, that's totally not.
And I read this a couple months ago, so I don't quite remember, but I'm curious as we go through it, like, because this is obviously someone is she in Japan or had they moved to America?
No, I think they're in Japan still. And no, they have to be in Japan because she's talking about the Japanese healthcare system.
So I'm just curious to see as we go, like, because it's a different country with different kind of systems in place and different cultural background, if there is a crossover, if there's parts of it where it's like, oh, I wish American doctors were like that.
Yeah. And so she's telling about how initially she was having all this pain and stuff, and then she puts this like frog doctor, she calls him a quack doctor. He's saying, yeah, everything looks fine, like you're good, and she's like, well, I'm just like in so much pain, like something's got to be wrong, right? And he's like, no, you're great. And I just made a note that like it's the same thing, like we run into that.
Yeah.
And I've shared with you that like lifelong I've had people say the same things, like everything looks great, you're totally normal, like it's all in your head.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that also happened to her. Yeah.
for something that should be fairly identifiable, like stomach cancer.
Yeah, I mean, people assume, like, people think that if you have cancer, like, doctors will easily find it, right? Like, that it should be apparent, but that's, like, not the case many times. And even I've read stories about people who came in with, like, visible tumors on their body, and doctors are still like, no, like, it's not that.
It's a wart.
Like, it's just a goiter or something, and then it turns out to be, like, thyroid cancer or something,
Yeah.
you know? So it's like, it's just, it's an interesting problem in the medical community.
Yeah.
So it was cool to see, or not cool, but
well, and he's saying there are no abnormalities on the blood tests, tumor markers, or the CT scan. I see no evidence of inflammation. Maybe it's all in your head. Go home after the glucose from your IV is done. Okay. And yeah, we've experienced a lot of that same, just like the tests are fine, we're done.
Yeah, like the basic tests are normal. It's not something. There's this conversation in the, like, medical community about, like, horses versus zebras, and doctors are trained to think that it's probably a horse, because usually it is, right? Like, normally it's the patient has diabetes, the patient has hypertension, you know, and if it's not those things, well, then you shouldn't be jumping to the conclusion that it's, like, a rare condition or something like that. But then that also ends up in this situation where basic tests don't look good, or, you know, look normal, and so they tell the patient, well, it's probably just you're not sleeping enough, or, like, go home and take a multivitamin. Like, that's what somebody at the ER told me. It was like, well, you just need to take a multivitamin, and I'm like, I already take one, you know. And
yeah, they've been not particularly helpful. So I had wrote, because when I had read this book, we had not found our current doctor yet, and they found this person who actually, like, listens to them. And just by pressing on her stomach, I think, right?
Yeah, she says he has, like, the hands of God.
Like, he just felt on her and found something that the CT scan missed. And I had wrote at the time, we need a him. And we've been very lucky to find Dr. Ellis, our current doctor, someone who's actually, like, run all those tests and is like, okay, but I believe that, like, I believe that you're going through something, or else you wouldn't be here.
Yeah, so, like, let's keep looking.
Yeah, and someone who actually took the time to... Dr. Jared Ellis, you're our dude. But, like, someone who'll take the time to keep looking, someone who'll take the time to text message you and ask follow-up questions, whereas most of the doctors would be dismissive. So we've been very lucky that since I wrote that note, I think we've found our him.
Yeah.
And we're starting to get answers.
Yeah, but she was very fortunate to, like, run into this, like, GI. I don't know if he was even just, like, a primary care doctor. I don't think he was even a specialist, and he took the time to, just examine her closely and, like, listen closely to what she was saying, and because of that, like, saved her life, like, no doubt.
Yeah, for sure. And, like, I don't know, I guess I've never had medical problems that were serious enough, so I've never encountered, like, the doctor phoning it in thing until you start dealing with this, and then it gets real frustrating really quick. Like, no, it's not all just anxiety attacks, people. Like, we know what that is. I really, really, like, I think part of what allowed her to keep this so fun is that she does have, like, kind of a twisted sense of humor from her career in the Boys Love.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things here where she's like, the doctors are like, oh, here, take this anesthetic that we're gonna have you drink so we can put a camera down your throat. And in her mind, she's going, oh, people use that for urethral play as well.
Yeah, she does have, like, a funny sense of humor, and she's also, like, curious, which I think helps carry her through too. Like, she really wants to understand what's going on in her body the whole time, and, like, wants to understand the test, and, like, is interested to see, like, this. What I find very interesting is that apparently in Japan they keep you, like, consciously sedated for endoscopies, which
for an upper GI, yeah.
The colonoscopy too, she was awake. So let me be clear, I would not be cool with being awake during that, but they give them, like, something to relax them, but they're awake.
But she's still here going, ugh.
Yeah, and so, you know, when we do that here in America, like I told you, when I watched one of these, like, that's all still happening,
Yeah.
but you're given the propofol, so you just don't remember it. You think you just took a really nice nap. And
I took a really nice nap when I had a upper esophageal expansion, and the propofol was very, very nice nap.
yeah, that's what they use to, like, put you to sleep when you get things like that done. It's like a light sedation. So, you know, you're still gagging and stuff like that, but you just don't remember it. So it's interesting to me that...
So we didn't get the sounding spray because we did it.
Yeah, but and then it's interesting that she can, like, she's watching as they're going through her, like, upper GI tract.
And you wouldn't want that? I feel like you're curious enough.
Oh, I would totally watch it. I just can't imagine... I would watch a recording of it, but I wouldn't want to be awake for it. Like,
Oh, okay.
you know what I mean?
Like, I feel like this is another thing I feel like we've run into a lot, is that we are educated, curious people, and, like, we want those kind of answers. And I think a lot of the times the doctors are just used to people not listening, not being able to process what they're telling them. Like, you're using big... So I feel like some of that thing where the doctors just don't want to even talk to us about it is just coming from an assumption they have about our ability.
I don't know.
But it's a dumb assumption to assume that everyone's stupid. But it just feels like there's too many times where they've explained stuff and the person, like, doesn't know how to, can't listen, and so they've just given up.
Yeah.
But to see someone like her who's asking all the questions and stuff is interesting.
Yeah. I like that she calls it being splurched from top to bottom.
Yeah, I've been through that.
Yeah, she's talking about, like, the isolation of being... Well, she's talking about how, you know, this is, like, pre-pandemic, before the isolation of, like, COVID and things like that. And then she's talking about how illness pushed that even farther. I think there was, like, a typhoon or something that was canceling, like, an event. She's talking about isolation as an artist, because a lot of time is spent alone, and so she was really looking forward to this convention where she gets to see all her artist friends, and I think it was about to be canceled because of a typhoon, and so she was already feeling lonely, and then now she was sick, and that made her feel even lonelier. And I just was like, it is really isolating being ill. Like,
well, and, like, in your case, I don't know, in her case, she was still able to go to the convention physically. Like, you haven't left the living room much since September because you can't get the energy up for it.
Yeah.
And so that's been even further. This is why you and the dogs have such a close relationship.
Yeah, me and the dogs have gotten a little weirdly close. Carson's starting to catch on to how much I just, like, sing to them all day and just talk to them, and but, you know, I mean, I just spend all day with the dogs, so it is lonely. But that's one nice thing about, like, social media and stuff like that, is that you know, I have been able to, well, I'll tell you, like, oh, I found this account and there's a girl that's going through the same thing, and so it's like, that does help a lot. But I can understand how she's saying, like, being sick makes you feel even more alone, because one, you just don't feel well enough to do anything, and two, it's like people have a hard time dealing with that, you know.
Well, and there's not a common necessarily touch point anymore. Like, people just don't understand what it is. Like, I mean, that's still hard for me. I can watch it, but I don't understand what it is. It takes me, like, having a really bad migraine day or something to be like, oh, this is your everyday.
Yeah.
Like, even though I see it, like, the impact is hard to...
And, like, it's just boring, too. It's like, I don't have anything to talk about. I don't know. I sat in the living room all day. Like, I do every day.
Yeah.
I crocheted 6 extra rows. Like, I don't know. But I just thought that it was interesting that she pointed that out, too. And, like, very early on and getting sick.
Yeah. Here's the GI prep.
Ooh, yeah. Gotta love it.
I had to do this once when I was young, like 18 or 19. They wanted to do a lower GI, and I couldn't finish drinking the stuff. I just kept throwing up every time it's just like they give you, like, 2 gallons of salt water, and they're like, take this and a laxative and chug it, and you'll be great.
I should have saved the jug. I just did this recently, not to overshare, but
But yours was like half the size of the amount that I drank.
yeah. Sometimes they're smaller, sometimes they're bigger. I don't know. I guess it's just.
But it was still an absurd amount. It's still like a gallon.
Yeah.
Half gallon. It's like a milk carton.
I felt terrible.
Yeah,
it was bigger than a milk carton for sure.
It's like at least a full-size milk carton.
I'm saying it's bigger than that, but
yeah, and then the thing I drink was twice as much, and it's just like salt water, which is miserable, and then the effects of that are also miserable.
Naturally terrible. But it really, they gotta clear everything out, because now she has to have the lower GI, which she's also awake for. It's just crazy. But I do think it's cute that she used the little peach.
Well, and here's her, like, just sat on the toilet.
Yeah.
We just set you up with some yarn and called it the shit and knit party.
The shit and knit. Yeah, thank you for putting that out on the internet. But
well, you edit these videos.
Yeah.
But I mean, she's just sitting there for like, okay, this is all I get to do all night is just stay on the toilet and evacuate. And then I love that, like, this is again like part of just her personality coming through that makes the book. Like, there's another book you haven't read by artist or writer named Harvey Pekar called Our Cancer Year, and it's probably more gut punch than this book, but he's so straightforward about the misery of it, and that she's kind of got this, like, her personality is a little more playful. So I like that she keeps using this peach as the butt, and then she's got like the censored tube up the peach butt. But it's like, I also love the idea, that was the note that I wrote, is that she draws like boys love, but then, because she knows that this is going to a different market, is like, let me just draw a peach here instead of.
But you can totally see also like the evidence of what she does for work. Like, that's.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
The drippy.
Yeah, and just.
And just the little comparison to the actual butt.
Yeah, it's all very cute. But yeah, I do think it's that funny, like, weird sense of humor of hers that makes this such a lighthearted book, even though it is about
cancer.
Yeah.
One of the things that like struck me that I think we've been struggling with is that her and her husband have kind of, because of the situation, both have very real needs that are almost mutually exclusive. And we've ran into that to some extent too, I think, where like the fears you have and the fears I have about where a bad medical situation could go kind of like grind on each other and make the fears worse. And she's talking about him he suffers with depression, and he needs someone to share his fears with. But she can't really be that person for him, right? And he's trying to stay strong and not depressed for her, but without someone to go to, that gets harder and harder for him.
Yeah.
And like I feel like we've definitely, gone through that, because there's a thing where like if I be honest about my fears, then that's gonna make you be like stressed out about what I'm stressed out about.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Sometimes if you're honest about what you're going through with what, all the responsibilities I have, it's like, I just can't solve that problem for you right now.
Yeah.
And so I very much, felt sympathy for them on that. It's hard.
Yeah. And it's especially hard. And I guess that's why you made that note there, is because now they've brought in her sister-in-law, who is a nurse, and she's just like this really strong foundational presence for them both, because like she can be that for him. She's very cheerful and upbeat about it all, and like knowledgeable and calm, because her husband, even though she draws him as like this big luchador bunny, apparently he's also a huge crybaby.
Yeah. Like
cries at the drop of a hat. And so like his sister is all chill and like this nice like mellow presence, can like support Hilnama while she's sick, and like be there for her, can support her brother. It's like,
my note was like that we don't have this because we're kind of isolated here by moving to Alabama for me to take my job. Like, we left, all of my family are all in the same town basically, or in Sacramento, like the extended family. So all of like my family's pretty much within an hour and a half of each other back home, and then your family's kind of like
We're
scattered
just like
around.
belong to the one, yeah.
So we don't have like, and we're not super social people that are going out and have like a huge extended friend group. I have one awesome coworker who's been like, if you ever need anything, call me. Get
Yeah.
phone number, but like we don't have like, if my parents were here,
We're
like
definitely hermits.
yeah, but like if we still lived near my parents, my mom would be over here like cooking dinner
Oh
to
yeah,
make it
she would be here like
easier,
every
and
day. Yeah.
yeah, so we just have that extra struggle of like we've gotten a situation where we're on our own. Um, well, something here. Oh.
Oh, she's talking about. So then she had to go get.
No, I was just very mad about all of the failed IVs.
Yeah, all the failed IVs because she had to go get the IV in for the colonoscopy. Yeah, and she's talking about how they kept having to stab over and over to get IVs. But it's hard. Like, even that nurse was saying when I got mine in, she was like, well,
because
they're so dehydrated from the prep. It's hard to be. If you can get veins in a GI lab as a nurse, then you can get anything.
Because everybody's.
Because they're all dehydrated.
Yeah.
They've just been shitting their soul out for 8 hours.
Well, I have an extreme aversion to blood draws and IVs. I don't mind needles. Like, I get allergy shots on the regular, but anything that's like going into a vein and like putting things in the vein, or especially like taking things out of the vein, I can feel it. And it makes me so distressed. So the idea of her failing 4 times, I would have just like, I would have been punching the nurses and like, I'm done, I'm leaving, I don't care about the procedure, I don't care that I just shit my brains out for 8 hours and it's all going to waste. Like, I can't do it. So
bless her.
Yeah, I mean, just reading this book and watching you go through what you went through is very much pointing out to me how ill prepared I would be for any kind of, like, I barely made it through getting the upper GI, and that was with an easy IV. But even them just leaving me there with the IV in my arm for an hour, I was like seething for an hour.
Yeah, you were saying you were like super anxious, but when I was laying there, I was just like chilling.
I don't know about anxious, just like I just wanted it out of me so bad, and then like the cold of like the feeling of the stuff going up in your arm.
Okay. So now they know that she's gonna have to be hospitalized at this point. So she's like putting together a shopping list, and I thought it was so cool that she like put that down and gave good reasons why. That's just so handy. Like, people don't think about things like that. It's a little bit different because I guess the hospitals in Japan provide different kinds of things, but the list overall was like super helpful, and you don't think about stuff like that, but if you learn as you go in and out, like the things that will make it more easy or more comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, my note that I wrote is like, this is real adult stuff.
Oh, for sure.
Like, this is real life stuff. Like, I've been pushing at that in a lot of the books I review, is that I like them, but I just feel like I'm ready for like adult stuff. And like, when you start dealing with this in your real life, like a book like this that is very practical and is not hiding behind any mythology or anything, it becomes more valuable as an adult, because like, this is real world stuff. I'm old enough now and smart enough that I can just have someone tell it to me as it is, and that's more useful to be like, hey, you need this, you need this, you need this. And like, I still, like, we're gonna talk about these Nightlight books as well, which are for kids, and they have like a story wrapped in a mythology, and I can enjoy it as an adult, but it's not as useful.
Yeah.
And so like, I just think, more stuff like this. And normally I rant against autobiography too. This is a book where autobiography is like adult and useful, and like is telling people who are going through, this is a very particular experience, but also similar for a lot of people. And that's like, because she's so helpful and informative, and it's not just like the bitching and whining either. It's like, let me be helpful through my experience. And I really appreciate her approach in that. And then like, keep the ability to keep it lighthearted.
I was gonna say, but it never feels like she's complaining, even when she's talking about being in agony. It's just like, well, that's just kind of how it was, but like let's talk about this other part of it instead. Or like, I don't know. It's just, and it's so, she just gives me this sense of like such a resilient person. And she seems so smart because even here she's like, make sure you pack things for mental health. Like, make sure you pack things for sleep. Because if you think anyone is sleeping in a hospital, you're wrong. Nobody sleeps in a hospital. Patients don't sleep. Nurses don't sleep. Like,
oh yeah, and like earplugs and earphones would be like my number one. Like there's no way I'd sleep in a hospital with people. Like even going to get the GI, we're sitting there and there was someone just like It's like, what are they doing back there?
It just, I don't know. It was just like super smart.
Yeah, I just think this whole book is smart. This is talking about just the medical bills. Who was I supposed to ask to be a guarantor for medical bills that could explode into millions of yen? Now, I don't know what that translates to in dollars. I feel like 1,000 yen is like...
I don't know.
I don't think it's millions of dollars. I feel like when people talk about, it's like 2,000
No, I don't think it's like millions of dollars. But it's still, like, it's obviously a significant sum.
Yeah, and then this says that in the unlikely event that I died, the payment and all sorts of paperwork would rain down on anyone who would be the guarantor. Who was I supposed to saddle with the weight of a decision during surgery if something happened that could determine whether I lived or died? And again, it's just that real world complexities of like life as you get older. And like,
and when you're like put in these kinds of situations, like even the other day, like before my procedure, it was like obviously nothing like was going to happen, but I was like, just to be sure, like make sure. And it sucks to have to like look at you and say, like, if something went wacky, because sometimes weird things do happen.
Yeah.
Like, don't leave me on a ventilator. You know what I mean? And that's like a horrible thing to have to ask someone to like shoulder that, but that's like that adult stuff that's just necessary.
Well, and then the very real, I guess to me, it's like, A, I wasn't worried anything was going to go wrong. B, I would want the same thing, so it would be tough, but to me, that's...
Yeah, I mean, I get that we're on the same page and we've like talked about that a lot.
I don't know. It wasn't as much of a worry for me, I guess. Like for me, what the worry is that you get into these situations and now you, like for them, they hardly make any money. I forget what her husband does, but like she's a manga artist. They don't have a lot of money, so they got to go to someone else, and then they could put someone else in these dire financial straits. And like we're in that same situation where like it's not dire. I mean, I've got a great job and made plenty of money in the last year, but
it's not great.
If it goes wrong, you could very easily see like, hey, I've got a big chunk of money that we've been saving for a house, and that could disappear overnight. And like,
like I can't work right now.
You can't work, and so there's just like all of these, like you're in a situation where also can you no longer make money, but it's like more and more is needed to try and even get you back to the point where maybe you could start making money. And so it's just like, you're already stressed enough, your family's already stressed enough, and then you're putting this extra stresses on people about medical bills and who's going to loan me money. I mean, like, like you would be totally screwed. Like you would be having to go to people and ask for things, it's just really crappy situation for people to get in. And then society, we're finding out, like if you try and go on disability and we were legally bound together, we'd have to spend all the money in both of our bank accounts before you could go on disability. So like the way society, just is not at all helping people who are already in the worst situation. Is very frustrating.
Yeah, that's something I always have felt bad about watching, like when I would be doing clinicals and like watching the family try and navigate the paperwork and these decisions. And like I was helping a patient that was being transitioned to hospice, and his son, it's like it sucks because his son's already upset and stressed out because his dad is actively dying, and then it's like on top of that he's having to make all these phone calls and arrangements and paperwork and figure out how they're going to pay for this, and it's just so overwhelming.
Yeah, it's the same when someone dies. You're like at your weakest
Yeah.
moment, and all of a sudden you've got the most amount of bullshit.
Yeah, it's just really tough.
Like, let's fill out this paperwork so society can effectively move on beyond the existence of your parent.
Yeah,
And you're like, whoa,
you have to get all
I'm.
these certificates, and you have to make all these phone calls, and like, it's exhausting. So yeah,
Like, I'm trying to move on. Fuck you all. Like, you're not impacted by this. Like, wait a few months and then I'll file the paperwork that you can take this person out. That shit should all just be automated.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a perfect situation. And I hate to see it. Oh, what is she saying? She's talking about her family. Because I guess she grew up in like an abusive household, which she also discusses. And so she's explaining that to her sister-in-law because she's decided that she wants her sister-in-law to be her guarantor for the medical everything, since she like knows it and she trusts her and like she's knowledgeable, so that her husband doesn't have to make those kinds of decisions. But then she's talking about how like they grew up in a pretty like nice household and like normal childhood, like stable.
Yeah.
And she's just saying like it's hard for her to like understand that, I guess, or sometimes like.
Well, and she's also saying like she's just thinking, oh, there must be something about growing up in a family like that
makes you like kind of. I don't know, it's just like, and I was saying I feel that about you sometimes because we grew up very differently, and it's like when I see you and Trevor with your parents and like in your household, it's very different.
Yeah, I think it's prepared us in different ways because I think you're like her in that you had a really rough childhood, but that's made you super resilient. And like there have definitely been times through all of what we've dealt with where, because I grew up in a very stable house with no real problems that we dealt with, my parents are still together, they still are crazy about each other.
Yeah, it was pretty wholesome overall.
Yeah, like I never had anything traumatic happen to me, like growing up, no real struggles. So like that in some senses has left me worse prepared. I think there's a stability and an understanding of how to navigate family and stuff that maybe is like more second nature to us, or there's that net there, like I said, like my mom would be here if she had like was going through shoulder surgery herself, and she was still talking about maybe I could fly out and like come out and like cook for you guys and do chores and stuff, and it's like, no, Mom.
Yeah, she's so sweet.
So there's like that, but then that also has left me like less resilient, where there's been times where you're the one going through it and you still got to pull it together to like get me back going, and then I can like handle it for another 2 months.
Yeah, it's just interesting the way that she's like exploring that too, and like she's asking herself like, can his sister really understand, because she wants to specify that like if her family shows up, she doesn't want them allowed to see her in the hospital. And so she's trying to like make it clear to her sister that the hospital staff needs to know and why, and she just wants to like express how serious it is, because like when someone gets sick and they're maybe dying or whatever, it's like it can be easy if you don't know the full situation to see like somebody's mom come in and be like, oh, my baby's dying, I just want to see her, but like
not know that person wants nothing to do.
Doesn't want them there, so anyways, like that's why she's talking about all of that. But I was just saying, like, sometimes I feel that way about you too. I'm like, he has this like weird superpower because he had such a different like upbringing. But you're right, it's just like different kinds of situations make different kinds of people, and we balance each other well in that way.
Yeah, like I feel the same. Like I said,
I feel like they do too.
I feel like you're more resilient, but a lot of times I also do feel like, and we talk about it, this isn't like me being a dick on camera, I don't think, but we talk about like there's certain lessons I know, like you said, how are you so efficient or things like that, and it's like, well, because I lived in a household that kind of modeled that like more structured environment or something where you had to be more just constantly used to things changing all the time.
Yeah, you have to be able to like go with the flow.
But I'm like not good at adapting to that because I put a system in place and then the system needs to stay, and that allows me to be effective.
Yeah.
But like if that gets disrupted, I get very distressed. So it's just interesting like that we could think of those as each person is like, wow, you're so much better at chaos. Oh, you're so much better at like structuring things and getting it done. Oh, and then here, yeah, it sucks to get kicked out. Like, you know, they're basically like not allowing him to come see her right away.
Because they had to rush her to the ER, right? Because she was in so much pain.
Yeah, and so like when you had a bad reaction to the vaccine, and that caused some ER visits, and then when you got actual COVID too, like that was another set of ER visits. But especially when you were having the long haul reaction to the vaccine, that was still like peak COVID protocols. And so you'd go to the emergency room and I just have to like drop you off and then like, you know, call me.
Yeah, it sucked.
Call me. It sucks for me. And
I mean, it sucks on both sides because I'm like sitting in the ER and I can't walk and nobody's checking on me. I'm in an ER. Like,
no, they literally like put her in a wheelchair and like left her in a hallway with like a sheet.
For like 12 hours, yeah.
Yeah, not even in the waiting area. But then there's like nothing I can do. I can't be there to advocate for you because like they won't let me in and like you don't have enough energy to advocate. So
yeah, it's just hard for everyone.
It's just a shit situation. Yeah.
And then they're like getting the results back and the next morning and they're finding out that it's like worse than they thought, you know, and it's probably gonna have to like things are gonna have to get moved up as far as like treatment and stuff. And she's like, well, I had all these plans and I had this thing I wanted to go to and blah blah blah. And he's like, okay, but is any of that like more important than your life? And it's just like, you know, that thought about how quickly illness can just like derail all the plans you have.
Everything. I mean, for you, it's like, it's now a year that you've been
almost,
out of school, almost. Like, after many, many other life delays, you finally got in and were kicking ass at what you wanted to do, and then that's on a just
maybe permanent hiatus,
indefinite pause with the potential for like, hey, I can't, like if I respond to COVID like this, I can't be a nurse.
Yeah, and like with the genetic conditions and stuff.
Yeah, so it's really, I don't know, it's just really frustrating.
Anyways, I wasn't trying to like reflect on that personally, just that.
But that's what this is, though. It's like that's.
I mean, I'm just saying I wasn't trying to like turn that back on me. It's just the reality of like how quickly everything changes. Like, you know, people say it, but it's like you treat your health as this given until it's gone. Like my ability to walk, I never thought at 33 that I would need a cane or a wheelchair, and yet, you know, like here I am. And so it's quick. It's just amazing how quickly all those things can change for people.
Well, and that extends out to like the little things, like going to the haircut or whatever. Like, just all kinds of plans that we have, even like not set plans, but just things. Oh, we'd like to go walk the dogs, or you know, all of these kind of things that you want in your life all of a sudden become
impossible or
limited.
Or something you have to plan for. Like, I have to make sure I have an emergency bag if we're gonna go to the grocery store in case I need one of my things, you know, like right away. It's like, so it's just funny how like stuff can change so quickly.
And I think the biggest thing for me has been learning to accommodate that, because I've always been very much like, this is what I want to accomplish, this is how long I think it will take to accomplish it. And like I've always been very good at predicting that, like, okay, I need 6 months to get this thing done. And I started already having to deal with that just being in Alabama with like tornadoes.
Yeah.
Like no
Life
one.
here is just unpredictable.
Yeah, no one here really seems to give two hoots about a solid plan. Everything's always kind of put together the day of.
Yeah.
And it drove
And
me
no
nuts.
one's in a hurry.
Drove me nuts. But then it's like, oh yeah, because like you can't schedule ahead because Lord knows what the weather is going to do. But then this extended it further to like I can't plan for anything, and I feel like I'm getting better at that. But that was a really big shock for me at the beginning. Is not only are the plans that you've had out the window, but you can't really plan for anything. I don't remember why I wrote this, but I wrote fuck insurance companies. But they're definitely talking about like what we've gone through, which is kind of like the like steps that you have to go through in insurance. Like they can't just do the thing. Like I wanted to get an MRI to make sure that because I have problems with my shoulder. And
from all that drawn.
What?
From all that drawing.
All that drawing, yeah, for sure. And like I've already done physical therapy in the past and know that it not worked, and I just didn't have health insurance. Now that I have health insurance, I'm trying to get it taken care of. And the doctor's like, well, we're gonna have to. That physical therapy wasn't recent enough, so we're gonna have to send it to you again. It's not even worth scheduling an MRI because the insurance company's just gonna reject it.
Yeah.
So we got to do this thing that we both know is gonna be ineffective, but it's not even worth talking to you about this. It's really annoying, the steps they make you go through.
I do think it's so funny how like the doctors all look like people, but then for some reason her and her family are all bunnies. I'm assuming so that like privacy or something, I don't know, but I just think that's so cute. And it just cracks me up that like she's talking about how the cancer is going to light up in a PET scan, and she's making this adorable little doodle, but it's like about all the tumors in her body. Like, it's just so funny to me. She's so good at that.
Well, I think part of what she's doing is just that, like, these avatars are more easily inhabitable.
Yeah.
So you can feel sympathy with them, whereas this is like more a specific person. I think her husband's pretty specific, but they're still like general enough that you can kind of plunk the people you know into them. Like you could mentally put me into that big. I don't look like a WWF guy, but I think it's easy enough for you to plunk me into that, and
for sure.
likewise.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like that's what she's doing, and like here she's talking about her friend who's a nurse. And she's a specific person as well.
Because she's been hospitalized now, and so her friend came to visit her in the hospital. For like lunch at the hospital or something, and so they're talking.
But just having someone who's like knowledgeable in the area and like actually can talk to you, like even going back in your health history, having one of your mom's friends have a medical background.
Yeah, it was really helpful. And she's even talking about like she understands like all the different ways that this can go. So she's like, okay, worst case scenario, like they have to remove part of your bowel and you're gonna have a stoma. She's like, I can show you how to clean that and like do the dressings and stuff like that. And I just was thinking about how helpful that would be, because it's really overwhelming. Like your body has drastically changed in this crazy way. And when you're in the hospital, it's like you can learn, but it's just an overwhelming environment, and you're tired and you're in pain, from your procedure. So like how amazing would it to be to have like a nurse friend that like could come to your home and be like,
show you a second time.
Show you slowly and explain why, and then tell you all the little tips and tricks, because I can guarantee you like an experienced nurse could slap a stoma dressing out, in like 2 minutes.
Well, and they have like
and know how to like keep the skin healthy, and
but also like the psychological aspects of patient care if they're a good nurse.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
Like, so they can help you with that stuff. Or, like, they can dump all this stuff on you in the hospital, but you're going to forget it when you get home. So the ability to just call up and be like, what was that thing I was supposed to do again?
Yeah. If you run into a problem, you can just, like, text your friend and be like, hey, I'm having irritation. Mm-hmm. And they could be like, oh, you need a barrier cream. And it's like, I don't know. It would just be an extra layer. It seems like in her situation, even though it's super shitty, she had all of these really amazing resources. Like,
when I feel like even though you're like didn't finish school yet, you have a fair amount of that knowledge that's made it easier for us.
it's more reassuring for me, I guess, because I can kind of understand a little bit better.
Yeah, like when we're talking to doctors, there's some like vocabulary and concepts there that we can push a little bit harder and dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
So that's been, yeah, very helpful. And then you're talking here, I think, about.
Oh, she just was saying, like, you know, man, like, sometimes you just gotta cry and, like, just let it out. She's like, and I was saying that it's harder to learn that skill, I think, for a lot of people than you would think, especially when you're in, like, a long-term difficult situation, because a lot of people don't like to cry, or, you know, it's like, everyone tells me, like, you just gotta stay positive, and I'm like, okay, but sometimes I can't be positive. Like, sometimes I just need to cry, and, like, that can be exhausting for you and me, and vice versa. Like, sometimes you just need to be upset, but, like, it is.
I tend to go more, like, angry, though.
Yeah,
like,
you get more, like, irritable or angry, but, like, I tend to be more, like, I'll get upset and cry and stuff like that, and I get tired of it, but also, like, yeah, she's just saying, like, sometimes you just gotta do it. It's just healthy. It's just important.
Well, and that's what I was saying, like having the nurse friend there, someone that can kind of not just the physical stuff, but the mental stuff is helpful.
She's understanding, like, the holistic. Oh, and then she's, like, waking up from the anesthesia.
While he's still doing the procedure. Yeah, no, that would be terrible.
That would be pretty scary. Like, terrifying.
That's all that note was, nah, I'm good.
Yeah. Oh, she was, like, talking that she likes to, like, list or, like, label all of the things.
Oh,
which
like
I also think is
room.
really cool. Yeah, she'll label, like, equipment and stuff like that. But then she have this, like, box here that's, like, blurred out, and there's a question mark, but it's going under her dressing, so I was saying it's probably suction tubing.
Oh, okay.
They'll do that for, like, abdominal surgery stuff, because it's like a constant low grade suction that will pull blood out so that, like, the cavities don't fill up with blood.
She's got all these little extra noises. It makes shoo tuck, like just the noises in the room. I like too that she knows the oxygen, but she didn't remember what it looked like or couldn't find reference for it. That is a clever. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
And the IPC device. What is that?
That's intermittent pressure device, or pressure
on her calves.
Yeah, you put them on people who are bedridden, because it'll do progressive pressure periodically on their calves, because that's where most of the time you'll get deep vein thrombosis, so it helps prevent clotting. Okay. Because surgery patients love to get clots in their calves, and then they'll throw it, and then they die. So, or have, further issues.
So that's like that helps
prevent that. Yeah. Because if they're not walking, the way that the legs circulate blood is, like through muscular contraction, like through walking and moving. So.
And then here you just wrote, damn, they removed 60% of her colon.
Oh, yeah, when they described, so now they finally done the surgery, and they've gone in and, like, because they didn't quite know how much it had infiltrated and stuff like that, and so they've done the surgery, and they're just describing the extent to which it had spread and how much they had to take out. Like, they took out part of her colon, but also the lining of it's called the peritoneal cavity, which is like the abdominal cavity. There's a continuous, like, lining, and they had to take a bunch of that. And
they took the upper half of the colon from the appendix to the transverse colon, about 60% of the colon, surrounding lymph nodes, several areas of peritoneal dissemination. Yeah. So basically they're telling her that they, like, scooped her out like a pumpkin.
They, like, went in and, like, scraped out a bunch of stuff. Yeah. So she has had a really extensive surgery.
And, like, you're in pain from the various areas where the surgeon scraped away, like a pumpkin, the inside of you. And that
because it's like a membrane that's, like, attached to...
That sounds awful.
Yeah, so then they would have to, like, literally
Yeah,
pull it away.
and it's connected. It has nerve tissue all through
and vessels and everything. Yeah, so she had a really horrible, extensive, painful surgery.
And like this drawing of her like freaking out, like oh
frozen in
shit, and then
pain.
holding the like pain clicker, like give me the drugs.
Yeah, I can't even imagine the amount of pain. Yeah, and then she's like listing here the way people, and I hated, as a clinical student, I hated having to do this to my patient because I only had one patient and I was in and out of that room every hour.
Yeah.
Doing something for them. I had to do a check. I had to do meds. I had to bathe them. We had to walk.
And you want to just leave them alone.
And I wanted to just leave them alone because they were so tired, but they have to get taken care of. And it's not just nurses that are going in and out. It's the physical therapist. It's the respiratory therapist. It's the doctors. It's
well, and that's what she's showing here, right? Is like the.
So that's what I was saying, like when I say nobody sleeps in a hospital, like nobody is sleeping.
Yeah, like she's saying nurse, occupational therapist, personal care assistant, attending physician, nurse.
Yeah.
And then you've got family coming in. And,
And then there's people like coming in and out or walking by all the time. It's a hectic environment. It's not peaceful.
Very excited. 17 days after the surgery, she has to make note of her first normal poop.
Would be exciting.
Yeah.
That's, when you get a nice normal one, it's good news.
After days.
If you have GI problems.
Yeah. Which we won't go into, but is very real.
Yeah, no, we won't, but... the pills. Yeah, they're talking about options for chemo now because she's obviously going to have chemotherapy as well. And they're like discussing options and she can take pills and like listing pros and cons or do IV. And Carson, of course, was like, just take the pills. Like, why would you? Because one of her reasons is like,
she's worried she'll forget to take the pills. And I'm
which for me, like, that would be a valid concern. I just couldn't be trusted. I have ADHD very badly, and I couldn't be trusted.
No, but like you just set your phone alarm and you go take it when they're like, if that can save you from having an IV in your hand forever.
It's not forever.
Like, but like it's there. Like it's just kind of permanently there for a while.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that factor into why people need to have different kinds, but.
Alarm on your phone, no IV.
But Carson is on a very strong anti-IV campaign.
Yeah, so to me, like, it was like, pros, no needles, can do it from home. Cons, can forget to take it. Not an issue, got it solved. Pros, won't forget to take it. Surgery unnecessary. Cons, gotta find a vein every time which hurts. Oh, so you gotta re-jab yourself. You can't just.
It depends. Some people have have a port put in, and some people don't.
And you can't even do anything. Nah. I'd be on the pill regimen. I'd be taking that shit. My phone would be helping me out. That'd be good.
So she's starting her IV and she's getting like really sick. I love the little barfing, and she's like all. But then they're like, well, like, can you try to eat anything? And she's like, I want cake and ice cream. And it's like, yeah, man. That was like the same thing with all my little old people in, the long-term facility when I care for them. It's like, grannies love ice cream and like, whatever, if I can get Barbara to eat, 3 bites of her sandwich in exchange for an ice cream cup, then game on. Like, it's nutrition, it's calories. So
yeah, once you're to this point,
just get it. Like, whatever you can eat.
Eat what you want.
Yeah.
I'll be eating ice cream too.
Yeah.
This is another thing I really liked about what she did, along with all of those, like, what you need to know and stuff. She's taking a very analytical approach to just, like, mapping what's going on in her whole body, which now you've started doing something similar, like, to kind of track, like, she's tracking taste changes, mouth ulcers, nausea. This is just all these side effects
like
from
common chemo.
Yeah, from the chemo. And so that she's taking that really analytical approach, I think, is really smart. It's like a lot of information for her doctor. And then she's also doing like these really interesting things here about what her normal flavors were and like creating charts about how she lost her salty,
Yeah.
and the umami and the sweet are going down a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think like having all those visualizations of these experiential things that may be hard to describe is really smart, and probably really someone who has that kind of mind and that kind of data is probably really helpful to the doctor too.
I was just gonna say that though too, for her it also is probably a good coping mechanism, because clearly she likes to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that probably collecting that data and creating those visuals probably was, because she was doing that in real time through her chemo, so probably that was really like a good coping mechanism, like a good distraction, like I'm always trying to stay busy, because it's like you have to find ways to be productive and distracted, and so I feel like that was probably good for her, because that's obviously how her mind works too.
Well, she's just so curious, like naturally, like this is actually pretty interesting. I don't think when I read this that we had figured out that you probably have Ehlers-Danlos yet. But one of the things was looking at your fingernails, realizing that you have these kind of ridgy fingernails like that is evidence of the Ehlers-Danlos. And so that she was getting that from the chemo. Now that I'm looking at this, I think I hadn't noticed that before. I just like the analytical approach.
Yeah.
But the fact that she has even speculated that these bumps, because she gets chemo every 2 weeks, she thinks that this ridge system is like, this is how far a nail grows in 2 weeks. But seeing this now, looking at your nails too, like I wonder if the chemo causes a similar breakdown in the collagen.
Well, it basically causes cell death, so possibly. I don't know. I didn't learn enough about how chemo works chemically to understand, but
I don't know. It's just this is something that we noticed on your nails that helped us, and you're always talking about how easy your nails break and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
it's cute too, because she's like, oh, I didn't actually lose that much hair, and she's like, I even got clippers to shave my head bald, but
you found the best head shaver.
That thing is tight.
Yeah.
Let me plug, what's it called? The Bulldog?
The Bulldog.
The Bulldog head shaver. Let me tell you, I just chrome this dome up in like 5 minutes tops. It's super easy if you shave your head.
Yeah, we'll throw that in as a commercial.
I will take a paycheck from Bulldog shaving.
Oh, yeah, she's talking about how grateful she was for Japan's healthcare system, which allows for speedy preparations for treatment and health insurance anywhere in Japan. And just talking about, how fast she was able to get treated. I think this story would have been more tragic in America.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Just from beginning to end, it would have been a completely different experience. I mean, you don't have to go very far to like hear to find sad stories that end.
Well, I mean, even in Japan, which seems like a more care-minded healthcare system from what I'm picking up from this book, still had that initial stage of like, it ain't nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like in America, there would be so many, just they didn't have the money, they couldn't get the treatment. No, just go home. It's fine.
Yeah, or like the only doctor that could do that treatment was 3 states over, and how are they going to get 3 states over? And yeah. So.
And then this is, I like. Her final chapter seems to be more like, where we're at now and what her overall
like a
experience
on the whole thing.
Because this is basically like her saying that that she's pretty much good, right? Like she walks away from this, like now she's in remission. I think, is that correct? It's been a while.
Basically, yeah. She's saying that like she's glad that she survived it all and like was able to finish the book, and now she's talking about like some of the psychological aspects of it and things like that. And she's talking about some of the things. I think she's reflecting on the things that were the most helpful and the things that were the least helpful. So she starts with the worst, and she's listing some of the things that people have said to her, like, did you have too much anal sex? Or, you don't look sick at all. You can't do that. Or
when are you going to get well? Are you better already? You eat healthy and exercise. You don't look sick at all. Like, even like our neighbors.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he didn't say that from, and a lot of these, like this, did you have too much anal sex, or fake medical diets, pyramid schemes, preaching, like that's all annoying. But a lot of it is just like from a good place. Like, are you better already? When are you gonna get well? Like, they're trying to be, but like he was saying,
it's ineffective communication, even though they might not be coming from a place. But even like that question, that's why I put that note there of, I hate when people ask me if I'm doing better, or when am I going to be better, or anything like that, because I don't know. And like, I think about it all the time, but I try not to think about it because
it's like, are we there yet? No, I don't know. If we were there, then I'd tell you.
And it's like, stop asking me. Like, if I was better, I would be shouting it from the mountaintops, and I don't know when I'm going to be better. I don't know if I'm ever going to be better, and it's hard. And like in her situation with terminal cancer, like that's an even more loaded question, and it's like, that's just a painful thing to ask someone, even though it's coming from a place of kindness. It's a painful thing to ask someone. So I hate it when people ask me that.
Well, and I mean, like he was saying, I'm so surprised that like COVID had such an impact on you, because he was like, I've seen you guys out in the backyard, you both look athletic. And it's like, well, not so much anymore, but also like we're never like super athletes. We're just people who like work out every now and then.
But I mean, we look like pretty healthy average people.
But that's what I'm saying is like you take that visual of like, well, you look healthy. And it's like I think we've seen that too. I mean, now that you have shaved your head and you have a cane, like people look at you and I think they assume you're going through like chemo or something.
Yeah, which I don't like either, but it was inevitable.
But it was like stranger when when you had the reaction to the vaccine and like you quote looked healthy, because we were working out and stuff at that point until that happened. That you had hair, we'd go to Walmart and like you'd be like walking all like twitchy, and people would look at you like there's this tall beautiful woman who looks healthy and attractive, but then like what, they can't process it, and that's been very
like you
strange.
have to look a certain way, and that's like a thing like in the chronically ill community that they deal with all the time. It's like, well, you don't look sick, and it's like, well, what am I supposed to look like? Do I have to look like a skeleton? Do I have to shave my head for you to believe that I'm sick? Like,
yeah, I feel like now that you have a shaved head, people just go, oh, like they accept it, like, oh, you're sick because you don't have hair, but then...
Which was not my goal. I just was tired of dealing with going bald, and I don't like that people are going to assume that, but I don't know. It's just dumb. Like, you can't tell if somebody's healthy or sick just on how they look.
Yeah, like I just sent you a video of a guy smashing a hamburger and drinking a beer and then going into a cage and kicking someone's ass in a cage fight all fat.
Like, who knows?
Yeah, we've seen fat boys do spinning back kicks. Yeah, so it's just been strange to watch it. This one is talking about the family's cooperation, and it's hard to deal with. I've made my husband shoulder quite a bit and still do. And then like she's talking about the things that she wants him to do, like, oh, help with the laundry, no, please stretch out the wrinkles, or like, he's doing the dishes and she's like, well, you're scrubbing too hard, go easy on that. And so I made the note of like, and this is what Mark told us, coming into it, because my best friend, his wife also had long COVID, and it impacted them. It took about a year, I think, before they were back to pretty normal. And so when you got it, I talked to him, and one of the things he said is like, just you both need to lower your expectations. Like, yeah, like he's gonna have to do all of the housework. So like, just lay off the, you're just like, he's gonna have to lower his expectations for what he can accomplish in his day, because he's got all this other stuff that he needs to do. And then like, she needs to lower her expectations about like, okay, your shirts are gonna be wrinkly, it's okay.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right. And I just put a note, like, as on the counterpoint, it's really hard if you're the person that's done that thing to then have to like relinquish it to the other person, because like you and I have very different ideas about like how the house should be looked after, which is why I do most of it, because I'm way more picky about it. But it's like that thing where I'm like, I don't want you to help me clean because it's just going to be a fight or whatever.
But then it's like, then I have to be the one to do it, and so then it's like, we both have to
like relinquish that and be like, oh my God, Carson's mopping the floor with this cleaner that's gonna dry out the wood, but I don't want to like flip out about it, you know what I mean? And so I'm like, I just need to be like, okay, but he's mopping it, and like we're happy about that. So
well, and that's why I think it was important that she put that in there, like that it's hard to deal with.
It's hard for both people. Like I feel more, luckily lately I've been able to pick back up some household tasks and things, which feels good for me. Not that I can do it right, just that I can take some of that off of you, because it sucks watching you work a lot and you have all these kinds of things that you're doing and your art projects that you're working on and living the line, and then you have to come home and take care of the dogs and do the grocery shopping and cook and clean, and it's like, that sucks.
Yeah, and I think we're much better at navigating it now.
Well, and
you have more energy now too, but even when you didn't, like, I think we both,
you have to figure it out.
It takes a while to, like, for me to lower my expectations about what I can get done in a day, or what I can do effectively, or my personal time, or like all of those type of things. It takes a while to accommodate to, and on the other side, it takes a while to accommodate to, like, well, he's screwing up the wood, but I guess I'll just
I was definitely the girl being like, no, to shake out the wrinkles, and you're like, fuck the wrinkles, I just need to get this put away, and so I had to be like, okay, that's fair. We both had to like take a little peek into the other person's perspective I think we both, and I know that sounds weird that me and Carson had to have like a deep conversation about how to do the dishes, but those things, like when we say that like everything changes, like that's, the house changes, the navigating household life. And
like this dude's haven't learned how to cook for the first time. I mean,
because it seems like she's done most of the domestic tasks up until now, and so he's
like, luckily we were pretty split already, where I would cook and do dishes and stuff most of the time anyways, but it's just it's tough. Like, it
can be really overwhelming.
That domestic stuff becomes very overwhelming when you've already got all this other stuff going on.
Yeah. And then she's saying at the end, like, one of the things that was really the most helpful was just to be able to keep living life as normally as possible. And I think that for me too, that again is like one of those things where your priorities just shift so much now. Like, the fact that I was able to get up today and like get dressed and put on a little makeup, and that's,
have the energy to think your way through an hour-long video.
Yeah, and like hold a conversation and focus. Like, that's amazing. And she's talking about like being able to continue to do, like the housework, to be able to do hobbies. Like, those are the things that keep people going through stuff like this. And that's why I'm so passionate about like palliative care and medicine, because that's the branch of medicine that comes in for patients like this and says, like, what are your priorities for life? Like, what do you want to be able to do? Do you want to be able to go running again? Is there this trip you really want to take? And, like, how are we going to get you there? It's less about...
Especially if, like, death is imminent. Like, in this case, they were able to treat her.
Yeah, palliative care isn't always for people who are dying, but it's for, like, chronic life. It's like a lifelong chronic condition that's not going anywhere. And so they come in and they're doing things like pain management and symptom management and helping. The goal ultimately is, like, to increase quality of life. It's not necessarily focused on curing.
And like, if someone was like, okay, you've got 6 months.
Yeah.
Like, when my Uncle Randy was in that position, there were things he still wanted to accomplish. So some of it was not about trying to keep you your healthiest.
It's about trying
but
to
just
keep you
like
feeling the best.
let's get you to where you can go do that one trip you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it's gonna probably diminish. It's gonna take 3 extra weeks off of the end, but screw those 3 extra weeks. You got to check something off, and
yeah,
they gave
so
you the
really
pain
meds
meds and stuff.
You have to examine your, like, you really have to examine your life goals and, like, it just makes you stop and, like, rethink about everything.
Well, and I think that this, long COVID and the reaction to the vaccine and stuff has done that for both of us.
Yeah.
In different areas where, like, I've learned to appreciate things. Like, I've learned how to scale.
Yeah.
Like, I can scale back up if we have the time and energy, but I've also learned how to scale down to, like, just enjoying sitting on the porch. And, like, oh, we can't go take a trip this summer, but we can do this instead. And I think in the long run, it's made me, I don't know, happier, but, like, more able to find contentment in more variety.
About, like, gratitude.
Variety of things.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that I'm, like, content overall. Like, I don't know, I kind of always have something I want to be doing, but
yeah, you're never, like,
you're never
content, but I don't know, like, yeah, I don't know if gratitude's the right word for me. Like, it makes me more grateful for, like I said, that little $5 candle.
Yeah,
I'm very grateful for that candle. Like, that's a big source of joy for me right now because it smells good and it's pretty. Like, you just learn to savor those.
I guess I just learned to be okay with the slowing down.
Yeah.
Find value in that as well.
It's hard for you. You're a busy bee.
Yeah.
And then this is the afterward. This is where she talks about how she's now no longer considered terminal.
Oh, okay.
And so she was like, well, I made this book, and at the time it was terminal, but now I'm, like, no longer considered that, and, like, that she came off of hospice. And I was saying that I love when that happens, and it happens a lot more than people think. Like, a lot of times people think if you go on hospice, like, that's it, game over.
Yeah, that was
But a lot of times people improve, actually, on hospice, or can even come off of hospice because they've improved so well, and they're either expected to live longer than qualifies for hospice, or, like, we don't know if or when they're going to die anymore. Because, again, it's like hospice focuses on making you comfortable. Like, what are the things that you need as a person, not as a patient?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If that makes sense. And so a lot of times people respond really well to that kind of care. And that's where I think medicine is trying to, like, needs to step back in and start looking at
the total
person. And then that's where, like, doctors like Dr. Ellis are so important, because they do look at the whole person. Like,
he's looking at, like, psychological and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's we call it holistic. Like, it's the all over approach, head to toe, soul, heart, body, all of it.
I've just been seeing in a lot of the rabbit holes I get down about technology and all these, philosophy and whatever. I've been seeing a lot of people advocating for work on the macro level.
Yeah.
And, like, understanding how to navigate the micro and macro, that our society has gone too analytical and to dissolve everything down into the micro, thinking that that's going to be, and I think medicine went that way too, that's where all the answers are going to be, and have lost sight of the holistic picture, and that you kind of need to be able to operate and understand how the two levels of interpretation, like the stuff about the DNA, like going in and trying to fix the DNA directly, which is micro, is not as useful. It's turning out as working on like trying to talk to the thing that talks to the DNA.
Yeah.
Which is more of a macro whole body thing. So I do think we're headed that way, it seems like. But
I hope so. And I mean, in like nursing care, obviously nursing, any profession has like struggles, but nurses especially think about that a lot because they're the ones that are there with the patients,
yeah,
dealing with the person, not just nurses and like the CNAs or the PCAs. They're the ones that deal with the person that's crying and in distress and needs to be talked to.
But I feel like they're kind of like, I feel like nurses are kind of the like store manager of the medical world, where like the store manager is the one that's got all the employee bullshit to manage and deal with and all the customer bullshit to deal with, but then they've got the corporate pressure from the top, where there's that area where you're at the disconnect between the number crunchers and like the ground level, and it seems like the nurses are kind of facing the administrative problems. And like they may go to the doctor and be like, hey, we need this holistic approach, but the doctors are still more likely these days, I think, still to take that micro approach.
Yeah, that's a whole conversation that's way too complicated for here, but the medical system's whack. But I'm glad that this awesome artist survived. I don't know if she's still alive, but
I hope so.
I guess we should have looked that up. But as far as I know, she's doing well, and
by the end of this book, she's no longer terminal, at least.
And I just really, really liked it. And like I said, it's the end result is like such a positive, happy, cheerful story about cancer that I was kind of, not the word reluctant, but I was like reading a story about someone with cancer, like that's going to be kind of sad, but it was really just like informative, and she's so, like you said, analytical and so curious and just overall like resilient, and really was like, listen to my story, and like this was all hard, but like learn from it, and you should go get screened, and like this is why this is important. And
I could think of like off the top of my head, like 20 artists that if they did this book, it would be the most miserable, like unpleasant to read. It would become politicized about all of the very real problems with the healthcare system and all of that. It would have. She
did talk about it, but didn't like make it this whole like bitching session. It was just like, this is just kind of how it was, and this is what we had to do to navigate it. And
I mean, maybe some of those artists that I'm thinking of, if they went through something like that, it would change them as a person in the way that it's changed us. Like, if they did it the right way and learned from it like she did. But it's very obvious to me that she had a healthy set of kind of world views or mental capabilities or personality traits that made this. Like she talks at the very end about, she says here, the key to continued treatment is stamina and willpower. And like throughout the book, you definitely get the sense that she's just someone who has kind of extraordinary stamina and willpower. And obviously this book was being made while she was going through this.
Yeah, because she thought she was going to die, so
when you get to the end, she's like, hey, I actually got to finish it. And then there's even like an afterword after that, like, hey, now that it's getting ready to print, now I'm not terminal anymore. So, like, it wasn't just that she was going through all this, she made this extraordinary work while she was going through this. So that's that willpower and the stamina. It's just impressive. So I think it's a book that I would highly recommend, and not just for people who are like going through something and need that sympathetic kind of experience of like, okay, someone else knows what this is. I can identify with it. But this is the kind of book that we should. I imagine it would be easier to brush off if you hadn't gone through stuff, but also those kind of preparatory things. It's like really important. Like read this book, kind of know like how things could happen and what you got to get set in place. And humans suck at that. Like,
yeah, we're terrible because like it'll never happen to me until it does, right? But
yeah, why would I need to prepare for
I
this?
don't need to worry about it. But
at least have this book on your shelf so when some shit medical situation does happen, I mean, you can read it in an afternoon too.
Yeah.
For all the information that's in there.
Yeah, so I just thought it was an awesome book. It was like, yeah, it was really informative. It would be something that could help prepare someone for a situation like that if they've never had to deal with it. But it was also just really cute and lighthearted. And like when I finished the story, I felt good. Like I didn't feel bummed out. I was like, that was just so happy.
All because the tubes go into peaches.
Something about the peaches.
And sounding loop.
I don't know. Yeah.
So, anyways, thanks for listening to us. Hope this was informative. Definitely, if you can find yourself a copy of this. I'm a terminal cancer patient, but I'm fine. This is from 7 Seas Publishing. And it really is a very good book.
Yes. 10 out of 10. Super liked it. Love the little bunny tummy.
With the stitches.
Yeah, super cute.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.